Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Spinner Reviews, and today I'm going to be talking about the new album from Torche called Restarter. So something I've unfortunately noticed in my listening, let alone reviewing over the last couple of years, is that I've been really behind when it comes to metal. Sure, the last Mastodon album cracked my top 10 of last year. I talked about a melodic death metal band called Siegeworm in my first Underground Corner of last year, and I have occasionally touched on stuff that can very be loosely classified as some kind of metal, like Linkin Park and Chiodos and Mice and Men. But to say I was neglectful of the genre that year, and to a lesser extent 2013, would be an understatement. So I figured that in 2015 I'd sort of give myself an early start by talking about the new album from Miami-based metal band Torche. I was introduced to the band back in 2012 when their last album Harmonicraft was getting a lot of hype. And after listening to it now, I'm kicking myself for not getting around to it earlier, since it probably would have been my favorite metal/hard rock album of that year. I remember Sammy from the Rocket Out blog described it as Mastodon meets the Foo Fighters, and that's probably the best way to describe it comparison-wise. They have these huge, towering sludge metal riff, but on top of it there are these very melodic, hooky riffs and just plain infectious vocals, which are also very Mastodon-esque in the delivery and presentation of it all. And to a lot of people, that pop sensibility is what helped Torche stand out from a lot of the other metal bands out there. Plus it helps that the average song length on that album was like 2.5 minutes, leaving few, if any, moments of filler. Fast forward a couple years, and now we have the follow-up called Restarter. And while I can't really say I'm connecting with this in the same way I did with Harmonicraft, it's still a pretty good metal album, all things considered. I think the biggest change in pace on Restarter is that, with some exceptions here and there I'll get into, there's definitely less of an emphasis on that immediate and accessible side of the band. The riffs are a lot heavier and meaner and more imposing, a lot of time feeling like a soundtrack to some monster movie where this giant creature is rampaging and stomping through the city, wreaking all kinds of havoc, while its henchmen are tormenting the townsfolk. Tracks like the opener Annihilation Affair and the aptly titled Minions, which was a very good choice for the lead single, driven by the simple yet effective riff throughout. Admittedly, I feel like the drumming could have been a little less simplistic, had more going on, but I'll just chalk that up as a nitpick. But one issue I kind of find hard to overlook, including on Minions, is the length. Now, like I said, one of Harmonicraft's strongest traits was in how concise it was. There was 13 tracks, 38 minutes, the songs got in, did their stuff, and got out. On Restarter, though, we see the band trying to flesh things out a bit more, with some tracks hitting 4 or 5 minutes, and the closer title track hitting a staggering 8. The problem for me, though, is that Torche doesn't really vary things up enough throughout the songs to justify these lengths. Sure, you've got songs like Annihilation Affair and the title track that do kind of get gradually more noisy and chaotic as they go along, building up tension in a great way. But at the end of the day, it's still them just repeating the same riff over and over again for 5+ minutes, which is inevitably going to get a little stale and monotonous and tedious after a while. Now, by contrast, some of the strongest moments on Restarter to me are when they are more concise, throwing out some great riffs, great songwriting, and infectious melodies and grooves in around 2 to 3 minutes, leaving the listener wanting more in the best way possible. Bishop in Arms is probably the most Harmonicraft-esque song here, mostly for having those more eccentric and less immediately metal traits, like the pummeling jungle beat and the soaring lead guitar parts that are just downright uplifting. Loose Men has this drive and energy reminiscent of a classic punk record, as well as some of the catchiest riffs on this album, and again benefiting from just how straight to the point it is. Blasted is probably where they justify the Foo Fighters comparisons most on here, especially in the guitar work, and Undone is just this 1.5 minute onslaught of aggressive riffs, complemented with this ultra thick and grimy bass sound, and some of the most engaging vocals on the album. Tracks 2 through 6 in general are just this hot streak of one great Torche song after another, but unfortunately, with the exception of the title track, Despite My Gripes on It, the album just kind of trails off for me afterwards. This starts off with No Sirven, which might have been enjoyable because of the good bass line, if not for this annoying, ear-piercing distortion noise that feels like seemingly goes on for the first half of the track and just renders the song completely unlistenable for me. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but it's not. Barrier Hammer is also pretty uneventful compared to the first half. The riffs don't feel as tight, and the song altogether just feels like this unfinished jam with how aimlessly repetitive it is. Plus, the production makes it a little hard to listen to in the middle breakdown section of the song, where it almost feels like there's an earthquake going on in the studio, and that's not as nearly as cool as you might think that would sound. But that all being said, even though I did say just as much negative stuff as positive stuff here, I still think Restarter is a good album. The songs that work really do work. It's just that I feel like there are a lot of ways that they could have made it stronger as a whole. So I'm going to give it an even 7. The album's not perfect, but if you're looking for some good new hard rock and metal for 2015, I gladly recommend it. So if you guys have heard this album, what do you think about it? Do you agree with what I had to say, disagree, have any feedback about the channel in general? Let me know in the comments down below. Share this around with anyone who might be interested. Like the Facebook page in the description for updates, commentaries, music news, and reviews of albums I don't get around to here. And hopefully I'll see you in the next episode of Spin It Reviews. Oh, and that mobile game is awesome. Good on you guys. Tries to flesh things out a bit, with some tracks hitting 4-5 minutes from Wildin'. That little number thing was not intentional. Wouldn't it be awesome if Torche covered that song? I'm just saying.